Madam Speaker, I was hoping I would not have to say much on this bill today. But it is amazing the twist and the turn that this bill has taken in the Parliament. And not that I am surprised at that, but I'm surprised, Madam Speaker, at the member for Beaufort North, that he would derive so much to make pronouncements about who's hypocrite and who is not. But that's not going to be...
Honorable Member for Castries South East, can you please take your seat? Honorable Member for Dennery South, am I hearing you correctly to ask me to behave myself? Am I hearing correctly? Castries South East.
Madam Speaker, I was saying that I am a bit taken aback by the turn of this discussion. This is not about Guy Joseph. This is a bill that is being presented, and I must compliment the Prime Minister. I did not ask him to legislate that. I did not even have a discussion with him when it happened. Madam Speaker, I have never had the opportunity to really speak about this subject. I did not make it an issue. But today, I have the opportunity, and I will speak on it. And you know why I will speak on it? Because it's not a religious debate that is taking place here. It is a fundamental right that is given to every one of us in the Constitution of St. Lucia. This is not about Guy Joseph. And I will read it, Madam Speaker. On page 17 of the Constitution, under section 9, it says, protection of freedom of conscience. And it reads, except with his own consent, a person shall not be hindered in the enjoyment of his freedom of conscience, including freedom of thought and of religion.
That's the point.
The framers of this Constitution
That is the point.
understood the fundamental rights which make a society a civilized society, and understood the importance of the freedom of conscience, especially when it comes to matters of faith and of religion. And for the members opposite to bring this debate to the level that they have brought it, Madam Speaker, it tells a lot. And it is more informative to me as a person than what transpired back then when nomination was put on a Saturday. But Madam Speaker, I heard the member for Beaufort North, and he said it was never the intention of the government for that to happen. I want to ask, who chose the date? If it was not the intention for it to happen, then why did it happen? And when I say they cannot check, Madam Speaker, they have a problem with me. when I say they cannot get their maths right, I heard the member for Castries East talking about the complications that may arise to check 21 days backwards. If you do not want it to fall on a Friday, a Saturday, a Sunday, whatever day, you just choose the day you want and you count the days backward. Is that so complicated that now we are saying let it go to a committee of the House to make a determination as to whether nomination should be on a Saturday or a Sunday or any other day? Madam Speaker, all my colleagues in this House knows my position when it comes to my religion. And I have never tried to impose my religion or my religious beliefs on any one of them in this honorable House. Never. Because I understand that you do not become what you do not want to be. And so, if I look at the situation that I faced, it was a very difficult time for me. And I can stand proudly here and say that when I met with my colleagues, I gave them the options that were open to me. I sat at that meeting when the date of nomination was changed. And there were many more persons than the persons here. And I told them, if Guy Joseph would have to go for nomination on a Saturday, find another candidate. That is how much I believe what I believe. That does not make me better than other people. So I'm not presenting myself as a holier-than-thou person today, even though that is what we all must aspire to, which is holiness. But I don't think I'm there yet. I know I'm not there yet. But I aspire to get there one day. And so, when the nomination found itself on a Saturday, I took all the necessary steps. I wrote letters. I made requests. I asked, can we shift the time to 8 p.m. on the Saturday night? Because we know that Seventh-day Adventists and all other Sabbath keepers observe Sabbath from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday evening. And there's a particular reason for this, Madam Speaker. This did not fall out from the sky. If you read the account in Genesis, it says the evening and the morning was the first day. So as Seventh-day Adventists, we understand the system under which we live. But when it comes to religious observances, we observe based on the Bible. We do not recognize the commencement of Sabbath from midnight, which is the commencement of the day according to the Roman calendar. So I knew that if the government was so minded to cater for me, a practicing Seventh-day Adventist, that they could have moved it past the sunset on the Saturday evening, and that would allow me sufficient time to still be nominated on the said day. The said date. But you know, this was not about me alone. There were other members who I would expect would have stood the same grounds that I was standing. But I've always known that anything you're not willing to do alone, don't try and do it. Because sometimes you have to stand alone. Madam Speaker, it was particularly hard for me Because I grew up in a community where everybody knows that I am a Seventh-day Adventist. I have spoken to many people. I have instructed many people. I have guided many persons. And then it became my turn. And let me relate an experience to you, Madam Speaker. My niece was at university in Plattsburgh in the U.S. And then she called me and she said, Uncle Guy, I have to do a regional exam. And that exam is on a Saturday. And you know what I told her? You know you cannot do that exam on a Saturday. It is against everything you have been taught and everything we have stood for. And she told me, I don't have a choice. I told her, no, pray about it. Write to the university and to the people administering the regional exam and ask for a special consideration to do that exam other than a Saturday. She was granted that privilege. How could I, when it became my turn to make a tough decision, do I go up to be elected as the parliamentary representative for Castries Southeast? Or do I walk away? If I had asked her to walk away, why couldn't I walk away now? You see, sometimes we put people through situations in their life and we do not understand what it is. Everybody may just look at that. What's the big deal? You just go there and you just do that. You can go and ask God for forgiveness after. Of course. And God would gladly forgive us. But all the people you have led in the past, all the people you have instructed, all the people you have told that they cannot do this, what does it do to them? And how do they view you at the end of the day? So you know, this is more fundamental than just going and get nominated on a Saturday. And my Prime Minister is here, and I told him, let us find a new candidate. I am going to throw my full support behind that candidate. I'm going to campaign for that candidate. I'm going to do everything to help that candidate win. But I'm not going and get nominated on a Saturday. And all my colleagues here can attest to that. And many more persons who are there. So I'm not presenting myself here. You know, I went through the hurt and I went through the pain. I've suffered a lot in the political arena. But I've always told the people in my church, the day that my religion comes into conflict with politics, I will know what decision to make. And I always know it is better to obey God rather than man. And for those of you who want to challenge that, you can go to Acts 5:29. When Peter was faced with a tough situation, he said, look here, I will obey God rather than obey man. I give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and I will give to God what is God's. At the end of the day, the law does not have to pass. If it ever happens again and I am there, I will take the same position that I have taken. So this is not about Guy Joseph, but this is about future generations. This is about other persons who would find themselves in a situation one day. Because if it happened once, it can happen again. So I want persons to know, this is not a religious debate. This is not a discussion about religion. This is a discussion about our rights and our freedom as a people. And some of us behave as if we are ashamed of God. And we are ashamed to be called a Christian society. If I look at what's happening in the U.S. today, President Trump is not ashamed to say that he will stand on the side of Christianity, even if I don't agree with the way that he is doing it. Because I don't believe that others should be made to suffer as a result. My belief, and to respond to the member for Viewfort North, who made all the allegations, if he understood the Constitution, and that is how, Madam Speaker, persons seek to mislead the people of St. Lucia into believing that because I play cricket on a Good Friday, that I have done something so wrong and so evil. If I believed that Good Friday was a day of observance for me, I don't ask anybody to do anything for me. I respect everybody's religion. All my colleagues can tell you, I have never attended a meeting on a Saturday. I have never attended a function on a Saturday. When I have to travel on government business, as much as it depends on me, I ask, do not schedule my travels on a Saturday. Am I not allowed that basic right as a St. Lucian? Forget about me being a parliamentarian. Forget about me being a politician. Am I not allowed that basic right that the Constitution affords me? And that if I so decide to offer my services to my country, that it must be done in a manner that would rule me out before I start the race. Because, Madam Speaker, what would have happened on nomination day is that if we did not fill in a candidate, it means that the other candidate won automatically. Why should I be put through this? Why? Why was it right for a sitting government and a prime minister who swore by oath to uphold the Constitution of this country would impose such a decision on one of the citizens of the state? But you see, Madam Speaker, a lot of things have happened in this country, and a lot of people get away with doing things because it has not been challenged. I was not in a position to change anything. I was not in a position to alter the course of history at that point in time. But today, Madam Speaker, we are in this honorable house, and the same members who are saying it was not the intention. So if it was not the intention, why is it so difficult to legislate it? If it is never our intention for it to happen, so if we cannot legislate it, it means to tell me that somewhere in the back of the mind of somebody, they are leaving this option open so that it can happen again. This government on this side is closing the door on it happening again. So if the intention was that should never happen, why we should close our eyes and let it pass? Why do we need it to go to a committee? So when it goes to the committee can debate and say, well, let's leave that possibility open so that in future, you see, Madam Speaker, it is deeper than that for me. But I don't want to make it a political debate. But I have to say this. Madam Speaker, it was public knowledge that the then government was determined to do whatever it takes to see to it that Guy Joseph was not in the Parliament of St. Lucia. And it was a public statement made. So why would I not think that it was intentional to have it on that day, to box me into a corner, Madam Speaker, so that I would have no choice. I would have to compromise what I've stood for in order to be elected or to walk away. So, Madam Speaker, when the member for Viewfort North talks about hypocrisy, because I respect the religion of everybody inside here. So if I have an activity and the honorable member for Mikud North, we always have that discussion. If I say we have that to do today, she tell me now, you know, that's my Sabbath. I said, I respect that honorable member. I respect everything. Because there are certain things about people that we must never trample on. And we have to understand as a society, Madam Speaker, we have moved too far away from God. That is why our society has decayed to the standard that it is today. When they started stopping prayers in schools, stopping prayers in cabinet. So, Madam Speaker, there are two powers that exist. The power of good and the power of evil. And if you push the power of good away, it is natural that the power of evil is going to take over. So when we see the problems in our society, we must ask ourselves, Madam Speaker, we want government to solve all the problems? I know the government cannot solve all the problems. I know that. Because there are more fundamental things that we have departed from as a society. And you know, we come to this parliament, we out there, we serving the people, and we are almost ashamed about speaking of the things of God. Madam Speaker, I went to the Turks to represent the government in the swearing in of the new premier, and I thought I was in a church service, Madam Speaker. There was so much acknowledgement of God and prayers and all the things that transpired. And I observed that there were more elected members who did not swear on the Bible than those who swore on the Bible. Madam Speaker, I have my beliefs about things. I don't condemn anybody inside there, because you must be convicted by something to stand for it. And if we cannot stand for the most basic principles that differentiate us, that defines us, that says who we are, you think is the Constitution we're going to uphold? You think is the oath of office we take that we will be true to? Madam Speaker, the reality is our society needs to reevaluate where we are. We need to see more of our family members going to church on a Sunday, on a Saturday, or any other day that they chose. When our society, Madam Speaker, was a society where every Sunday morning you saw families going to church as a family, we were a better society. We were poorer, but we were better. Because the goodness of the society is not measured by the cars we drive, the fancy houses we live in, but our relationships with each other. And I wish, Madam Speaker, that I would see this country go back. And everybody I speak to, I tell them that. I don't care what day you go to church. It's based on your conviction or your belief. But if all of us went to church, and all of us practice what our religion teaches, our society would be a much better society. We would have less need for the police. We would be a better society. So if we come with a simple piece of legislation to this parliament, Madam Speaker, to say we will observe the basic rights afforded to the people. And we talk about Seventh-day Adventists. Seventh-day Adventists are not the only people who keep Sabbath. Seventh-day Adventists is one of the religions in St. Lucia that practice Sabbath observance. There are Church of God and other religions that observe Sabbath. So this is not about Seventh-day Adventists because Guy Joseph goes to that church and you legislating for him. It is for everybody. And when we can observe the basic rights and freedoms afforded in this Constitution, when as a government we can uphold it, especially when it comes to practice of one's religion, that is recognized. We are a Christian society. But, Madam Speaker, I find that we have found ourselves in a place in St. Lucia where we are almost ashamed to say that we are a Christian society. I'll never be ashamed. Madam Speaker, I've never presented myself as a candidate who is a Seventh-day Adventist. I have tried my best over the years in my political life not to use my religious affiliation for political reasons. I have remained quiet. I've seen many people come and present themselves as Seventh-day Adventists because they believe that coming to that constituency, Madam Speaker, with a strong Adventist background, that they can influence votes in that manner. I do not play politics with my religion. If I go to church, I go to church, Madam Speaker. And every member in my community and my family can tell you, if there are 52 Saturdays in a year, I go to church all 52 Saturdays, as long as health permits. That is who I am. I didn't start that being in politics. That was who I was long before I came into politics. And people tell you that politics change people. Politics doesn't change people, you know that much, Madam Speaker. You know what it does? It puts us in the public eye. And you can only pretend for a period of time. But the true you always show up after a certain period of time. Because pretense is for a while. That's where the hypocrisy comes in. So, I am happy. And I am proud of my government. I am proud of my government for more reasons than one, Madam Speaker. Because this is a government who have always respected the religious rights and practices and freedoms. The churches have always done better under UWP administration. Always, Madam Speaker. I remember, Madam Speaker, I took part in a match against casinos. I was part of the match because it was an activity organized by my church. The next time I heard about casinos, I read it on a newspaper from overseas when the license was granted. Now, Madam Speaker, I have my views on this. If something comes to cabinet, I exercise my right to participate or not to participate. But I cannot impose on the rest of the country my belief that because I don't want something, if I know that it's by consensus, if the majority agree on something, then that's what it is. I cannot impose that on them. But I reserve the right to disassociate myself with it or to ask that my religious belief be acknowledged and that I be removed from that. So at the end of the day, we need to understand that we are called to be legislators in this country. And I think that this piece of legislation is a simple piece of legislation, but it is profound and it is deep. And it shows the respect of this side of the house for the right and freedom of conscience and of religion. That is what is fundamental to me. It's not so much about Saturday or Sunday. It is about the right that it affords me when I'm no longer in politics. If I choose to do something, I know that I would have contributed in a meaningful way to us being where we are today. And so, Madam Speaker, I can talk about my personal position for the rest of the day. I have taken many stands on many issues, Madam Speaker. Anything I believe in, I stand for it. That doesn't make me better than other people. And I will never present myself in this honorable house. People attribute things to me that I don't attribute to myself. They tell you I think I'm this, I'm that. I never said I'm this or I'm that. All I am saying is I have a conviction that as a Seventh-day Adventist, one of the fundamental differentiating mark of a Seventh-day Adventist is the observance of Sabbath. And I know many people who have left the church for many years. They practice lots of things that are ungodly out there, but they tell you they don't work on a Saturday. Don't ask them to work on a Saturday. I tell them, but all the other things you should be doing, you're not doing it. They tell me no. So you have to understand that when you grow up in a certain way, there are certain values that you hold dear to you, and it means something. And at no point should any government put its citizens in a situation as I was placed in. It was an agonizing time. It was a difficult time because I knew a lot depended on what I did. My colleagues, we were a team. We had built a team together for 5 years, Madam Speaker. And on the home stretch, with days to go, I had to look at all of my colleagues and say to them, I have no choice but not to play the game. So you all have to go into the race without me. I could not run my leg of the relay, Madam Speaker, not by my own choice, but by what was imposed upon me by a then government who was determined by any means necessary to see to it that Guy Joseph was not in the Parliament of St. Lucia. But I'm happy. I stood for my faith and I stood for what I believe. And God has always promised to reward those who would stand for what he says they should stand for. And Madam Speaker, it worked out. I thank my Prime Minister. I traveled out of the island. And people have their own interpretation of that, and that's okay. But God knows my heart. Nobody can read this. Sometimes when I don't know what's in there, he knows what's in there. And you know what? I won by the biggest margin that I had ever won an election in Castries South. You know why, Madam Speaker? Because if we are faithful in little things, what he promised us, he'll make us ruler over many things. And I believe that I was faithful in this one little thing, and that God has rewarded me appropriately. And I applaud my colleagues on this side of the house, and I applaud those on that side of the house who will vote in support of this bill, so that in the future, the religious rights and freedoms of people, and for those who spoke about Muslims, if our society grows sufficiently, that there should be a consideration for that, I know on this side of the house, consideration will be given. So at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, I hope that good sense will prevail and that we will get a unanimous vote in this house today to legislate that nomination day or election day or activities pertaining to that would not fall on a Saturday, a Sunday, or a holiday. And that I believe this will contribute to making us a better society. I thank you, madam.